Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is Dave here. And in this episode, we're actually going to go ahead and start getting into some programming. Now, in my last full episode, I did mention that I was going to start programming the technical indicators that our stock trader will actually use to initiate trades and to do like a watch list. So I actually, and this is kind of why the video has been late, but I actually did get all of that done. However, in the last part, I did, and this is like completely non-scripted, so pardon me. But in the last part, I did realize that with the technical indicators, the algorithm that it'll use will also include the sentiment values for both the news as well as social media. So I decided to go ahead and start on that. Now, in the notes here, you can see that the stock screener.py max price max price equals, I don't know why I put this in here. I think the reason why is because with the WeBull account, I have some open trades in there, so there's not like a whole lot of cash in that account right now. Now, when I was going through the sentiment, when I was programming the sentiment, I did add a couple of functions for our Mongo database. So basically, I updated the insert records to only insert many records, and then I also added a Upsert Records. So Upsert is basically, it looks to see if there's any records that match. If it does, it updates it. But if it doesn't, it'll go ahead and insert that record. Also, I added a create index function. And that basically, when you create a new collection, it'll, instead of having the underscore ID, that'll be an index, but it also allows you to add another column as an index as well. And I created both of these while I was trying to find a way to, when it pulls down the news, I don't want it to keep like adding duplicate values, or like duplicate entries for, let's say, April 12th, from CNN Money. The same headline, same date, same everything. We don't need duplicate records for that. We only need one record. So I also added a function which allows for the creation of an underscore ID field by using a key value pair from the data frame. So what this does, and we'll go through and I'll show it to you, but what it does is it takes the date and then the title, it combines those, and then it creates a hash for that value, so it'll always be different. And that'll be the ID field, which the ID field is the index. So if it sees that it's already in there, it won't write it again. It'll skip to the next item. Let's see. We've got, yeah. So in this new class that I'll go ahead and we'll start looking over. In that class, I have two. It's broken down into two separate types. It's a get symbol news and then get market news. Of course, the symbol news, you would include the actual symbol like TSLA, VRO, or VOO, any symbol that you want the news for. And then the market news is for the overall stock market. And this is just like a little example of how to use that. And it's by no means what this is actually going to do, but what it's going to do at the end of this project. But you can see it says from stock news import get news. That's the class. Symbol equals, for testing I usually use Tesla, so TSLA. And then while underscore name underscore equals main, get news dot get symbol news, and the symbol get news dot get market news. And then it sleeps for 60 seconds and it goes back through. Now we can basically change this to let's see, what would it be? Time t equals, like, basically what I was going for is like time, because we at the end of the entire thing, we don't want it to be trying to initiate trades after market hours. So market hours are typically, I believe it's 9:30 to 4:30, 09:30 to 16:30. So we only want the program to be doing stuff during that time frame. So yeah, you could do that with like a time, date and time thing. Also, we don't want it to operate during the weekends, so that'll be like the calendar function. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. In in 7.5, I mentioned about Google Collaboratory, and as far as it being like an online Jupyter notebook. Well, I went ahead and instead of using Google Collaboratory, because that's where I've been doing a lot of my experimentation, I went ahead and just opened up a Jupyter notebook within a Visual Studio Code to do experimentation on my local system. So that way, this won't be like a 2-hour video on actually getting all of the code. But what I'll do instead is basically go through each section and explain each section. Now you can see here, we do have a new library, NLTK. That's something learning toolkit. Let me look that up. NLTK. Natural language toolkit. So the NLTK, that will be for Vader sentiment, and we don't need to copy this. So let's go ahead, we'll create a new file. We'll call it stocknews.py, and I am using a camel case. I prefer a camel case to anything. So in here, we've got we'll go ahead and close that. So the libraries that this is going to be using is datetime, from datetime, import datetime. We have pandas as PD, FinNews as FN, and then feed parser as FP. Feed parser is used for RSS feeds. And then we also have RE, so that's regular expressions, config, that's our config file, Mongo functions, and then also GC, that's config, that's something we'll let's see. Yeah, we don't need that. Import WeBull. Why finance? Okay, let's delete that. Okay, so with our class, we have the get news class, and then we go ahead and we initialize that with the function init self symbol equals string empty string, and then we pass in the data frame and the symbol here. And then our next section is actually a feed parser. So I named this as parse news. And so in the parse news, and you'll see how all of this ties into the two main sections, but it's taking a feed, and then it's the feed.getNews. This is a part of FinNews, by the way. And then it's initializing a empty dictionary, and then it's going through each object, and then it's getting the title, the publish date, and also the summary of the article. So the publish date, it's a little weird because with FinNews, the published date isn't always in the same format, because that depends on who you're getting the news article from. So I noticed that in the providers that I'm using, they tend to use two different formats. So that's why I'm using a try and accept. So it's trying the first format, and it's taking the date, the B, that's so like 31, like March would be MAR. So just the short name, or the abbreviation of the month, and then the full year. So it's like 31 MAR for March, and then like 2020. And then it's formatting it as 2020 0331. So that's what this does. And in order to get that, I did have to split the data up into basically a list. So it's taking that list, and then that's how it's doing the split. And then if it doesn't work, that means that it's formatted a different way. And it's formatted into this one is the excuse me, need more coffee, I guess. So it's formatted as March, the abbreviation, then the day, comma, and the year. So it's MAR 31, comma, 2020, for example. And then I format it exactly like the one above. And the accept here for that is, this is basically a catch-all. So if it's not formatted in either of these two, then it's just going to print the date time. So I haven't run into any issues where it's giving this error and just printing the date time, but I wanted to go ahead and catch it just in case that there is an error. And then for the summary, not all articles will have a summary. Some will only have a title. So that's what this one is doing, is it's catching if there's no title, it's just adding a empty string. So, or if there's no summary, it's only adding an empty string. And then it's, after that, after it gets the title, the date, and the summary, it updates the dictionary with the date time, the title, and then a summary as a list. So, and then we have our data frame, and what this is doing is it's creating a data frame from the dictionary. And we use the data frame to actually upload it into our Mongo database. So, so with that, we rename the axis, or the axis, because what this does is when you create a dictionary, or when you create a data frame from the dictionary, it's going to take that, the index, and it's going to just put that as index. So we're renaming that column, our index column, as date. And then we're also renaming the column 0 and 1 to title and summary. And both of these are in place. And then it returns the data frame. And I know this is like kind of confusing. Like, where is all this going? And you'll see here in a second. So our next function in this class is a parse topics function. And shift tab, there we go. All right, in the parse topics, it's taking various arguments, and then it has a empty list as a topics, and then for each argument, the arguments are symbols. So you can have one or you can have multiple symbols. And what it's doing is it's taking, those are going to be the topics, and it's adding a money sign to the front of it. And that's how FinNews gets that topic for a particular symbol. So if you want Tesla, TSLA, it has to have the money sign and then TSLA. So that's all what this function is doing, is it's just adding a money sign to each symbol. That's literally all this one does. So then our next function is actually to upload all of our records. GC, by the way, garbage collect. Alright, so for this function, let's just go ahead and explain it. For this function, it'll upload the records. It'll have the database name, the collection name, the actual data, which the data is like the record or the data frame, the key, and then the column name. So the key, that is basically the index that we want to use, and then the column name. So data equals data, it's just initializing what's up here. And then we do a reset index, because what I noticed was when you have date, title, summary, it'll actually, when you upload that to Mongo, it'll only put in like title and summary. And the reason why I'm doing the reset index, this will come into the future once we start actually doing trading, sentiment analysis, because we only want, for the actual data frame that it's using, we only want date, index, or date, title, summary. But when we upload it to Mongo, it has to have index, date, title, summary, if that makes sense. It will in the future, I guarantee it. But yeah, it's doing a reset index. So it's shift the data index to column 1, and then it will rename that as, because when you do that reset index, it's going to take that date, and then it's just going to move it forward, but it's going to rename the column as index for some reason. I wish it wouldn't do that, but it does. So we just do a simple rename, and then the data frame, we call up the Mongo functions, generate hash ID, and then it takes the data frame, the key, the column name, and then a false function. So let's actually look into our Mongo functions to see what that does. So where is it? Okay, this is the create index, and I actually didn't need to use either of these, but I went ahead and left them in there just in case I ever do need to. But yeah, our generate hash ID generates an MD5 hash for the key value pair from a dictionary generated by 2 columns in a data frame. So that's that key and then the column. So typically this will be a date and then title. So yeah. And then how that does that is does a key list and then the data key to list. So because we're not just doing it one at a time, we're doing it in a efficient way with data frames. So it's taking basically the entire column, putting it into a list for the keys, and then it's doing the same thing for the columns, and they'll always match up. And then the hash table will be an empty list. So then it goes into a for loop, and then string to hash is taking the key list list for each value, and then the value blah blah. It's just combining these, and then it's appending to our empty list the MD5 string to hash dot encode UTF-8, and then a hex digest, and then it's returning the data. It's adding a new column to our data frame called underscore ID from our hash table. And then with the true false up here, the set index and then bool is usually automatically true. What that's doing is it's resetting the index in place true, and then it's setting the index to underscore ID. Because what will happen is up here, even in the data frame, if you visualize it, and it'll have index, date, title, summary, underscore ID. So, sorry, camera stuff. But then, so what we want, when it uploads it to Mongo, we want that index to be the ID. So it's basically, that's what this is doing, is it's moving it over. I hope that makes sense. And then because it's moving it, it'll take the current index and it'll move it over. So we just drop the we drop that column. And then it has else. So we can probably actually modify this a little bit. But well, it took me like quite a few days to figure this out, and I'm sure I can make this a little bit more efficient, because you can see here we have reset index, set index, and then a drop. So I could just move this up here and then do the if and else, and then the try and accept. So yeah, that's all that one does. And then in the Mongo functions, I also added this, if name equals main, exit. What this is doing is if you try to run this by itself, it won't do anything. It'll just exit out of the Python script. So that's all this does. So let's go back here. So we upload the records. We generate the hash ID. And then we do an insert records with the database name, the collection name, and then the data frame. So let me show you the insert records, because I did change that a little bit. So with the insert records, we just have our collection. The records is data to dictionary, orient to records, and we do a try and accept. So the collection dot insert mini and then records ordered equals false is important, because if you don't do this, it will try to order the records in the collection by the hash. So, like 0, 1, 2, 3, but that may not be accurate because we're generating an MD5 hash. So it could start with like 1, and then the next one will be 0, and then the next one will be 3, and then the one after that will be 2. So that's why that right here is important. And then if it comes up with an error, with the bulk write error, we do just pass, and then we return. So what that is saying is the errors that we get are going to be for duplicate records. So if it detects a duplicate ID field, instead of just erroring out and then basically just doing a break in our program, we just want to bypass it, move on. So that's what that does. And speaking of, with our Mongo functions, there are a couple more libraries that we're using. We're using pymongo.errors, and then import bulk write error. That's one that we're using. And then we're also using hashlib, and then import MD5. So, and then with the garbage collect, you'll see why I'm using a manual garbage collection here in just a minute. But we're deleting this data frame that we're using to upload the records. And instead of df, I'm using .data. And then we delete that, and then we collect it. So basically we delete it from our RAM. And you'll see why I did this here in just a few minutes. So our next function that we're using is WeBull for WeBull News. I did not copy that correctly. Okay, Control C. And you see how much faster this is by just copy, paste, and explain instead of actually typing it out? Sorry, I'm a slow typer. So get WeBull News, we're passing in the symbol, and then WB is equal to our WeBull function that we imported. And then news, WB underscore news is WB.get underscore news, and then our symbol, and then we're getting the last 500 items. And then we're also initializing an empty dictionary. So for each item in the news, in the WeBull News, we're getting the published date, and then that is item.get, and under WeBull with WeBull, it's listing it as news time. So it has the T, so it has the date, T, and then the time. So we just want the date. We don't necessarily want the time. And then that's going to be 0 because when you do a split, it's splitting it into a list. We only want the first item in that list for the published date. And then we do an update with the dictionary with the published date, and then we get the title, and then we get the summary. And the data frame, WeBull News data frame, is we're converting this dictionary to a data frame, and we're orienting it by index. And then we rename the date, or we rename the index column as date, and then we rename the columns, the actual data frame columns, because when you create a data frame from a dictionary, it's going to do index, and then the first column will always be 0, the second column will always be 1, 2, 3, etc. So we're just renaming those columns as title, and then the second one is summary. And then it returns that data frame. All right, next up is our symbols. So let's copy that. All right, symbol news, we're passing in the symbol, and then for the database name, it's doing db underscore the symbol. So it'll create that database of collections, and then it'll create it if it does not already exist. And then the collection name will be COL for collection underscore news. So no matter if it's Tesla, if it's VOO, Apple, any of them, the news will always be COL news within that within the symbols database. And then the column name, title, topics. So I could actually call in the parse topics, I believe, but we really don't need to, because it's just doing a one symbol. It's not doing like a full list. With FinNews, it does make it a list. So even if you're only doing one topic, it still wants a list of that one topic. So parse news, SA, that is seeking alpha. So it's doing a FN for FinNews dot seeking alpha. Topics is going to be our just, what is it, stock, hash stock, whatever that terminology is, money sign symbol. I'll actually look that up for you guys to see what the legitimate name is. But yeah, it's going through Seeking Alpha, Yahoo News, WeBull News, and then it's for FinNews. It can only use those two, or only those two allow for searching stock ticker symbols as topics. So that's all that does. And then it's creating a data frame, and it's concatenating, you know what I mean. It's basically taking all three of those data frames that we got from FinNews, and it's making one data frame for it. So it's taking it from the column axis instead of rows. So it's doing basically multiple columns, and ignore index is false. And then of course we're dropping all duplicates. So there could be duplicate news items for multiple providers. So that's all that does. Sort index. So the sort index, because we have multiple providers, so it'll have like Seeking Alpha, Yahoo, WeBull. So what we want to do is we want to sort it by date instead of having it like just sorted by provider. And then, like I mentioned with the garbage collection, because we don't need all of these anymore, we're deleting the symbol, topics, Seeking Alpha, YFin, and then WeBull News data frames. So that way we can free up that memory. And then we do the get news, upload records. We call this function. So after we deleted everything in this function, it goes through here, and then at the very end, it does a garbage collect. So you can see where that came in now. All right, next up is our general news. And this one is a biggie. So let's go ahead and copy that. And then paste. So it seems big, but it's not really that big. Symbol news. Okay, so general news. We initialize our data frame. So it's just self.df is equal to pandas data frame. Database is db underscore general. This can be a static value. We're not creating multiple databases for general stock market news. So that's why that's just a static variable. Collection name is col underscore news. Same thing with our individual stock ticker symbols. Key is date, column name is title, so that's how it's going to get the hash. Okay, so for CNBC, .c is equal to 0. You'll see where this comes in. So these are all of the topics that CNBC can get. And this is another reason why this one took a little longer. So we just create a list with these topics. And then for self.topics, the topic list, if C is equal to 0, we're basically going to parse all the news. Save feeds. So it's CNBC, the topic list, and then we're going to save the feeds. And then we're going to make C is equal to 1. Yeah, I see the logic behind it. So the logic is, I should have reviewed this ahead of recording, but yeah, it's fine. So the logic is, if this is the first time it's going through this function, it's going to first create a data frame. But if this is the second time, the data frame is already initialized. So the CNBC, we create a new one, and then because it's going through this list, so we create a new one, and then we concate the previous data frame with the new one, and then it just keeps going on and on and on. So, yeah. It looks super large, complicated. I hope I explained it correctly. If not, like, subscribe, leave me a comment below. Gotta get that out of the way, right? Also with WeBull, of course, if you don't have a trading account, I've got a link down below. Make sure you sign up for WeBull. It's an awesome platform for doing any type of actual stock market trading. But if you want to be a long-term investor, I do recommend M1 Finance, which is also down below. But yeah, after the plug, next we have CNN Money. This doesn't have as many topics, but it still has a few. And then because we've already created the data frame up here with CNBC, we don't need this if else. I'm so used to saying if then, but if else. So for each topic in the topic list, we create a data frame, and then we concate that data frame to our previous data frame. Same thing with Fortune magazine. With Fortune though, it only has one topic, so we don't need to go through a loop for that. So it's just breaking business news. FT, that is the Financial Times. So FinNews.Financial Times, topics, news. And then with Market Watch, we do have multiple topics with Market Watch, and it's just doing the same thing as the previous ones. With Seeking Alpha, you can only have, Seeking Alpha does have about 500 million different topics. I just put all news. So, yeah, I'm lazy. What can I say? With Yahoo News, it's just top stories. Wall Street Journal, we have world news, U.S. business, technology news, and lifestyle. And then we have Zacks. And Zacks is only one topic, which is small cap research press releases. Press release, that's the official topic. But yeah, so it goes through that and then it concates it. So at the very end, we drop the duplicates, we sort the index, and then we delete that. It's a small, that's like what, 1 bit in memory, but we go ahead and delete it anyways. We don't need it. And then we delete the topic list. So as you can see, the topic list just keeps getting overwritten. But we delete that. We delete all of our data frames that we created. And then we call the upload records. And then we return the data frame. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, the next video will be with the social media posts. And then the video after that will be calculating the sentiment values for our news, and then sentiment values for our social media posts. And then using those two values, we'll import those two values into our indicators that we're using to actually do watch lists and trades. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and we'll save our stock news.py. We'll save our Mongo functions, notes. We don't need all of that. Oh yes, this was just a debug value. This is just a self note for me. So yeah, that's fine. We'll just keep that on the down low, right? Alright, let's go ahead and delete this since I've already talked about that. Save, boom, boom. Alright, well that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or any comments, concerns, if you can spot anything that maybe I'm doing wrong or if it could be more efficient, please let me know in the comments below. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and say good day, good night, goodbye. Dave out. Peace. And I am back. I did want to go ahead and just say one last thing. So this is like a PS letter to you guys. Now, I actually did want to go ahead and actually show you how, show you that this works. So I always talk about Tesla, so you can see here in Compass, MongoDB Compass, and I should update this, but you can see that it added a new collection for the news, and this is what it looks like. So you can see this first news item, well actually the first 3 news items don't have summaries. So you can see the hash value, the MD5 hash, which is the date plus the title. So if you take these two values, this is the MD5 hash. So yeah, you can see all of the news items for that. Not very many, but this is just basically one pass. So it's taking I tested this April 3rd, so about 10 days ago. But yeah, it's going through for March 23rd through April 3rd. So that was the 23rd. So roughly about 7, 8, 9. So yeah, 10 days. the RSS feeds. So that is per symbol. And then for general, you can see that it added a... and I need to redo this one because it's still adding the object ID here. But we'll get this fixed. But yeah, it's... well, that's actually... No, that's fine. That's symbols. I'm sorry. There was a weird bug that it was doing that before I did the MD5 hash. But anyways, news. You can see that it's doing the same thing for the general news. Now, it did pull up quite a bit earlier with just general news. So that is, it's based on providers. So one pass for this gave me 203 news articles. So yeah, that's about it. So that is my PS letter, just to show you that it does work. And now, have a good day. Like I said, check out the links below if you do want to get into trading or doing investing. I highly recommend it. Be a long-term trader, even if you're only going to invest in just a couple ETFs. Check out M1 Finance. Start your financial journey as soon as possible. That way you can start compounding your interest and you can actually retire by the time you're 40 like I am now. But yeah, all right, have a good one. Bye.